What's going on, listeners? Welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies. We are rolling along here in November with Animated Movie Month, and I am super excited to be here talking about My Neighbor Totoro. Not only because I'm fascinated by this movie, but I get to bring back a good friend of mine, and Harrison from the Basement Binge is joining to talk about this movie. So, Harrison, welcome back to the show. Really glad to have you.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. It's been a while since we've done an episode together, and I'm very excited that it's this particular episode. So I've been enjoying your animation month so far, so I'm glad I get to be a part of it.
Yeah, this was one that I was really looking forward to. And, one that caught me way off guard because this is the first time I've ever seen this movie is doing this episode. So I wasn't sure what to expect. You had heard, well, I say you had heard great things, but like you hear great things about this movie, you read reviews, you look at the scores, and it's sometimes one of those things where like, well, could it be as good? And I'm really excited to talk about whether or not I think it is as good as the praise that I have seen for it. But before we actually get into that, November's a pretty big month for the Basement Binge, and I'd like to take a second to let you talk about that with the listeners about what do you got going on over there, because it's exciting in its own right.
Well, thank you. Yeah, here at the Basement Binge, we're doing Nolan November. It's something, the Basement Binge. I'm into binging movies, and one of the things that I always planned to do was a Christopher Nolan binge. So I'm kind of the eight main ones, starting with Batman Begins that everyone knows. Been binging through those all month. So there's an episode out on The Prestige, on Batman Begins, coming out very soon. The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. So just going through all of the Christopher Nolan films and loving it. It's a blast. It's fun. I'm sure, as you know, Matt, when you have a podcast to kind of organize, like, okay, I'm going to watch this movie and then I'm going to watch this movie. It's fun to just like almost like let that go and just enjoy movies that you love. So it's been a blast.
Yeah, no, I was really excited when I started to see the layout of what you'd be covering in November. And obviously you and I have talked, and listeners of this show have heard my reaction to it, and you've even mentioned it on your own site. But I'm very partial to Batman Begins, so I was really excited to see that you were going to be covering that, because yeah, I have a incredibly soft spot for Batman Begins in my thought process of where that ranks for Nolan and Batman movies. So
yeah, I remember your review. I remember you and I talking multiple times about how you how you say that it's a better Batman movie than The Dark Knight, and how it's the best of the trilogy, so on and so forth. And I was like, I'm not sure. And then I got to it myself, and I've seen it before, but it's been a long time. And I was just like, wow, this is good. Like, this really is that good. So that was a lot of fun. And the whole time I was just thinking about you. I was like, okay, maybe he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, jury's still out on that one, but here with Matt Goes to the Movies and My Neighbor Totoro, I want to let you take your first part to give the listeners a recap of this movie, what your thoughts are before we get into spoiler territory, because I think this is one that is probably hard to not talk about in spoilers, because to me it just evokes a lot of emotion that you have to talk about specific things that happen.
Yeah, okay. It's hard to say that, kind of explain what the movie is about, because I'd never seen it before either. This was my first time seeing it. It's been on my watch list forever, kind of like you said. When you hear those things about it. So My Neighbor Totoro, how do you describe it? I guess it's kind of just two sisters who move out into the country with their dad to be closer to their mom who's in the hospital. And then they just have fantastical experiences in the country. And it's just, I mean, like, I don't know. It's just like a really beautiful film. There was so much of it that I was just happy. Like I wasn't like thinking about too much, except for just how like peaceful and enjoyable it was, and how pleasant pleasant is the word that comes to mind. It was beautiful and it was pleasant and really, like you said, emotional, just in how real it all feels.
Yeah, I think that is a really, really good way to describe it because as I was watching this movie, I was just sitting there and I kind of stopped to myself and went, God, this is just like, it's gorgeous. It goes by at, to me, like a rapid pace, but not because it feels short, but because I was just so engaged in it. And the other thing that I thought of while watching this movie was, boy, this is something that just, it made me stop and go, this is why I enjoy movies. There's some movies where you can, you turn off your brain, as they say, and you shove popcorn in your mouth or whatever snack you want to have, while you're watching. And there's other things where you stop and you think, and there's deep messages. And to me, this is just, to me, it's one of those movies where I just stop and I think about everything going on. And it really just, this is a movie that makes me appreciate movies and reminds me of why I do this podcast in the first place, because I just love talking about this. But I think without getting too specific about certain things, that's where really I can just recap what I feel about this episode.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, well said.
Yeah, so Harrison, I'd like you to, if you don't mind, I'd love to actually talk about a segment that you do on your show to incorporate a little bit of the basement binge here,
Of course.
and whether or not this is a never watch again, a stream. So what I'd like to do is I'd like you to take the listeners through how you rate the movies on your show, and we can incorporate that with this today. If you could take the listeners through that.
Yeah, of course. So it's a segment over at the Basement Inch called Pick Your Poison that I made up. I don't know why I have that name, but in essence, it's just instead of giving it like a rating out of a percentage or letter grade or whatever, stars, it was all kind of based off how I would choose to interact with the movie again out of 4 options: to never watch it again, which is self-explanatory, to stream it is the next option above that, which just means when I'm kind of blindly looking for something to watch and it's on a service I'm already paying for, it's like, yeah, sure, whatever, I'll click on it. When you're browsing on Netflix and then you finally find something an hour later. Then above that is to rent it in the right circumstances. You pay a few dollars to rent it, be that Redbox or digitally or whatever. And then the top of the list, the last option is to buy it, again, digitally or physically on Blu-ray or DVD, and own it, watch as many times as you want. Those are the 4 options.
Yeah, so I'm going to go first if you don't mind, but after watching this movie, I have HBO Max. It's on that streaming service. That's how I watch this. But after watching this movie, I feel so strongly about it that this is a buy to me. I absolutely love HBO Max, and I will continue to subscribe to HBO Max and pay the monthly fee. But there is something about this movie that has just resonated with me to the point where I feel like I need to go out and actually purchase it and have a hard copy of this movie. So I will be doing that. Actually, probably on my lunch break tomorrow from work, I'll run over to Best Buy and pick this movie up because that's how big of a fan I am.
Yeah, I don't blame you. To kind of follow you along, I'd never seen this before, like we mentioned at the beginning. But I knew we were doing this episode, and I was just originally planning on watching it on HBO Max, same as you. But then I had a gift card from an Amazon gift card for work for $15 that I got. And this had been on my Amazon list for a while. I just kind of been waiting until I see it, and then I was going to buy it. And I was like, why not? I was ordering something else for Amazon. I was like, I've got a gift card that's the exact price of the movie. Just throw it in there. I'm already ordering something else. I know I'm going to like it. And I'm really glad I bought it, because if I were to choose a ranking, it would be a buy. I think if I were in your situation where I just watched it, I would have ordered it. I would have used that gift card and ordered it right after watching it, because it's just, I'm going to be honest. I don't think that there was like one particular thing that I could say like, oh, this really resonated with me. besides just like life is a really like beautiful thing, if that makes sense. Like the resonance it has with me is just like appreciation for life, if that makes sense. So it's not something I'm like, oh, this really impacted me, but it's just, like what a happy film. I plan to have kids one day. Like I would love to watch this with my little kids. Like it's just one of those movies that you can confidently watch anytime and always be uplifted by it. So of course I'm going to buy it and watch it a bunch.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, uplifted by it is a really great way to describe this movie. And, one of the reasons why I feel like it's so well made is, I just, the story just resonates with me. It's, like you said, it's about a family who moves out to the countryside to be with their mother who's sick and to be able to see her more often. And that's just where it immediately captures me, is about a family, about a dad with his two daughters who are going to a new house because they want to be closer to their mother, the bond between the sisters. It all works. To me, it's just such a great representation, of family and what family can mean. And what you will do for people that you love. It immediately from the start, you know lured me in with that message, and then the animation style on top of it is just, it's a can't miss.
Oh yeah, it's just one of those things that just watching it, you're just filled with pleasantries because it's just, that what can you complain about it?
Right. I mean, you've got, again, and it's in these movies too. Here's one of the things that I picked up on. And Harrison, I know you've, watched, a bunch of these style movies. You've done a review on the Basement Binge of Howl's Moving Castle, but the right voice actors too can really, lend to making sure that this works, because you are listening, with the animation style, there's a lot that goes into the dialogue and the way the characters sound. And I feel like that's just another thing where they hit the nail on the head, is everybody that they got to voice these characters, that also works. There's a warm feeling behind the actors, behind the actresses that voice these characters, that really just draw you into what's going on.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. And just to talk about voice cast a little bit, this is one thing that I think Studio Ghibli and them working with Disney that they did for these English releases does really well. Is that there's, it is a dub over an original Japanese voice acting, but I forget that I'm watching a dub. The way that they mold the voice acting to match the actual animation really, really fits. So it's not as jarring as like a traditional dub. Anyway, it's one of those things that just these voices that are so much of the character really bring it across. The two Dakota Fanning and Ellie Fanning, who played the two sisters, like they were just adorable. Like I just kept going, oh, that's so cute. Like genuinely, me and my wife, we were
Right.
watching it, and we were just, that's so cute in the way they just sounded. It really is touching.
Yeah, it really is. And it's just funny too, with some of the things that actually, the way that this movie is really talked about now, and the viewpoint that it has from fans. I mean, the scores on it are amazing, but this was a movie that was originally rejected. They didn't actually want to do this, and the initial pitch was rejected. And it originally was a box office flop. Like, this wasn't like, oh yeah, this is a sure thing right out of the gate. This is something that over time has really gotten the recognition that it has now, but it definitely was not like that from the beginning. And it's one of those things that, again, I love movies that started off as not what original, it wasn't originally this big huge thing, and then over time, more and more people watch it, the word of mouth gets out, and the film starts to get the audience that I really feel this film deserves.
Yeah, I agree with you. I It's a fantastic film. It's interesting. I was curious. I didn't know that about this, so I went and looked it up to see, what it had made, and it made domestically and its release about $2.25 million. In 2018, they did a re-release, and it made $1.25 million. So almost only $1 million less for a re-release. Like that. I mean, what a great re-release, but also shows how little it really did make. Which, uh, who hasn't heard of My Neighbor Totoro? So it's interesting that it had humble beginnings. But I think
Yeah,
that like we've already said, people just found it and latched onto it.
yeah. I mean, he has a cameo appearance in Toy Story 3. Like,
Oh
so,
yeah.
like, he has certainly, you know, made his way into more mainstream throughout the years, and it's just. I can't get over this movie again. The animation style, the voice acting, and really just the philosophy behind this movie. It is hugely influenced by the Shinto belief, and everything having a spirit in the trees and the forest, and it's just, again, it's an odd movie in the sense that, Harrison, when you really think about this and watching it, no, I hate to say it like this because maybe this sounds terrible, but nothing happens. Like, realistically, think about what happens in this movie from a sense of like grand scale or something like that. Nothing happens. It's just a story about family, but you feel like you've just watched something. Like, to me, I felt like I just watched something epic. Well, nothing really transpires throughout the movie, and maybe to somebody listening to this, that's probably not the most eloquent way to say it, but I can't think of anything else to describe it other than I felt like I watched something more than really on the surface of what it is, and that's why I love it, because there's so much behind what you're seeing.
Oh yeah, I agree with you. The synopsis here has on Letterboxd: two sisters move to the country with their father in order to be closer to their hospitalized mother and discover the surrounding trees are inhabited by Totoros, magical spirits of the forest. When the youngest runs away from home, the older sister seeks here to find. Like, that's it. That's the whole movie. Like, the synopsis is
Right.
the whole movie. Uh, yeah. What else happens? Yeah. As far as like plot, if you will. Um, more plagiarism, if you don't mind. I saw somebody else's review on Letterboxd. No plot, no central character, no antagonist, no defined purpose for the side characters, no threat, no three acts, no jokes, no punchlines, no explanations, no internal references, no catchphrases, no political polemical voice, no melodrama, no beginning, no end. One of the best films ever made. And I was like, you know what? You're kind of right. Whoever wrote that I totally just plagiarized. The sisters just experienced something really special. I because I know how long it lasted. And on the clock because I actually literally finished it right before we started recording. And so I was like, oh, it's coming to an end. Like, nothing's gonna happen. And then I was like, oh, nothing happened, and that was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing too that it does, I think, really well is it captures the spirit of like being a kid and how kids react to things, and how, you know, in the beginning of the movie, they get to the new house and the dad asks the girls to find the stairs, and they're running around the house saying, "Not here. Oh, not here." And the little sister's copying the big sister. And that's something that, is, for me, having kids myself, and when they were younger and everything like that, yeah, kids just have that free spirit, and anything can be fun and a game to them, and their reactions and the joy of just like simple everyday things. um I thought was captured like really, really well in this movie, that it really shows what it's like to be a kid and how they react to things around them.
Yeah, I agree with you. It just felt like it captured the grace of childhood. Even the way, like the simple thing, like the way that May, the younger sister, walked down the stairs when she had her hands clasped in front of her with the dust sprite that she caught. Just like not being able to take the whole step and having to go, one at a time. And it just was, and just like the carelessness, I'm gonna go run off and do some chores or whatever she said, and then she comes back with flowers and, Dad, you be the flower shop. And I just felt like, every once in a while, maybe it's just a little sentimental. You like look back on your life and you have those memories. You're like, yeah, good things have happened in my life, and I'm grateful for the people in it. I felt like I experienced that by watching a movie, because it just captures so close to reality, or not, family.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is, that's an unbelievably great way to describe it. And I really like too that this, for me, I watched, well, I'm sorry, I read a lot about this movie, and there's some really like dark some really like kind of dark and morbid fan theories. There's some other theories on it that are a little bit more jovial, but at the same time, I feel like you could go either way. Harrison, I'm not sure if you've read a lot of these, but I feel like you can go to both aspects of these theories, and you can get an understanding of both of them. But neither, to me, obviously, some of the darker ones are, it's like, oh, that's really sad. But there's also a lesson there in those theories, and it makes me think about what I just saw. It, I feel like this movie lends itself to, also, you could interpret it any way you want, and you could still get a sense of like completeness from it, whatever side you're on what you think this movie actually means.
I was saying, yeah, I agree with you. I think that read anything, I might also be able to understand it of that individual coming up with that theory. Because I think in how like plotless this film is, a lot of the power of it and a lot of the resonance and joy in it comes from the way we kind of express our own experiences on it, or project, not express. We project our own experiences on it, and how that comes back to us. How.
Yeah, no, I think that's, completely. Geez, I just, with a movie like this, I find myself kind of tongue tied because I'm so like captured by it. And as we're talking about it, I'm just thinking more and more, and my thoughts are kind of spinning because I'm really kind of in awe over what I watched, because I didn't know what to expect. But I will say that I did not expect what I got. So it's hard for me to sometimes put some of these thoughts right now, um, to the podcast, because I'm just so enthralled with this movie.
Oh yeah, I agree. Like I said, I literally finished it right before we started recording, and I've heard about it. I was expecting to have a specific type of conversation. Like I knew that Totoro was kind of like an imaginary, well, maybe imaginary is the wrong word, but we'll just go with that. Kind of imaginary animal or spirit, something that they experience that other people don't. And so I thought that it was going to be a little bit more sad, in that was like them escaping a difficult thing with their mother. So I had my own ideas, and then when it wasn't that, which it doesn't need to be that, and I'm glad it's not. It's just like, wow, I'm glad I didn't make this movie, but now I don't know what to say about it, because I'm so impressed by it that I'm still trying to. This is going to sound really weird. I'm so impressed that I'm trying to figure out what is impressive.
Yeah, again though, because nothing really happens in this movie, and for somebody who hasn't seen this movie, again, this, saying nothing happens might sound like, well, why would I watch this? But just because something isn't happening physically, there is something emotionally happening at all times, and thought provoking every single time. you are watching the screen. There is not a moment that goes by that you can't, again, Harrison, you just mentioned this a little bit ago. You can't pick something from your childhood and say, yeah, I remember that, or another point in your life. There is always something going on that you can relate to in this movie, but all it's all dedicated on memories and what you have gone through in your life while listening to the dialogue and just watching the simpleness of them standing in the rain for a scene waiting for a bus to come with Totoro next to them. There's so much there to unpack for me that, again, yeah, I'm still gathering thoughts about exactly where this movie sits with me in terms of like an emotional weight, because there's a lot.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of it that I think if I were to watch it a day later, a week later, a year later, my experiences is going to be different every single time because there is there's a long scene where it's literally just Totoro holding an umbrella, which is absolutely adorable. Like that's the other thing about both the two sisters, but also just the entire animation is that everything just feels adorable and like Totoro feels fluffy. I never touched him, but he feels fluffy and soft,
Right.
which is just incredible. But anyway, he's just standing there holding an umbrella, and it's like, man, I really could just sit here and think about that scene and why that's an impactful scene. And it'd probably take me like 30 minutes to come up with something to actually say, because I feel like so much of this is hard to express because it's more of an experience than it is a story you can reiterate.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And like I said, there's so much behind different theories about this movie that I want to go back and rewatch it. For me personally, looking at it from the perspective of some of these theories that, he's also the one is he's actually the god of death. And that to me is a really interesting theory, and one that I would like to kind of delve deeper into going back and watching the movie to see, where that lies. And I think, not to sound morbid, but I think you could pull from that theory but still really get enjoyment about this movie. And just the thought of, sometimes, understanding and learning, everybody processes it differently, but that is a natural part of life, and how you actually, accept, move on with your life. I really am interested in some of those theories that there's a much different meaning to this movie.
Now that I know what it is and what it um yeah, now that I know what it is, I'm really excited to go back and revisit it, especially with the ideas that you talked about, and just something that I've loved about and these anime films from Japan that I've gotten into more since doing the Basement Binge, be it a Hayao Miyazaki Studio Ghibli film or like one of my personal favorite films, Your Name. One of the reasons that I love them so much is so much of it is involved in like our connection to Earth and to the things around us in so many different forms. And just to plagiarize something else, and how it all feels like a genuinely positive circle of life. In darkness, like something you're expressing, it's still a very positive and respectable and honorable circle of life. That's just, I don't know, is a belief that like I really uh, that I want to believe in, and so having experiences that remind me to believe in it are always good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why it resonates so well, is because you can get so many different aspects out of this movie. I mean, you know, again, sometimes these aren't the greatest things, but 8.2 on IMDb, 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is a movie that has resonated with people on all levels. And I really think it's because, number one, like we talked about, it's a gorgeous movie. Number two, just at certain points, it's just fun. It's just wholesome. you sit there and you're just in awe of the color palettes of the movie, at least from my standpoint. But
Yeah.
then also you get into, deeper meanings, and you can take personal lessons from it and apply it to, things that you've gone through in your own life. It branches out to so many different aspects that anybody who watches this can take whatever they want from it, and in my opinion, be right.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So, one last thing here before we close out this episode is, these movies have been in this, this director has been now like really renowned as like the best of his genre for this. And I will say that this movie, I immediately, once I was done with this on HBO Max, I literally like clicked down on my remote and added every single thing that they had on HBO Max from this guy to my playlist.
Yeah. Yeah. Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli. It's something that I discovered because of the podcast, and I'm so grateful I have. They're powerful.
Yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward. I'm probably going to have to do a couple more reviews on some of these other movies, because if they're anything like this, I'm definitely going to want to talk about them. So, Harrison, we'll close this part out by, for me, on Matt Goes to the Movies, we do the reel system. For me, this is easily 5 reels. A beautiful story from whatever aspect I think the viewer wants to come from. A great voice, dubbing on this, because again, it can be sometimes very abrupt. This is such a seamless transition with this movie, with the dubbing, a gorgeous color palette, and just a movie that makes me again think about why I love movies in the first place. So for me, this is easily 5 out of 5 reels.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. 5 out of 5. It's one of those movies that let me say it this way. I'm really busy. I've been really kind of like stressed and anxious in how busy I am. In fact, I forgot that that I didn't forget we were doing the episode. It dawned on me today that I hadn't watched the movie yet, because I was planning on watching it yesterday and then I couldn't. Anyway, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta find an hour and a half in my day where I can watch the movie before I record with Matt. And so it was like, you're moving at 1,000 miles a minute, and then you sit on the couch and you press play, and it put me at peace. I still have a bajillion things to do, right? That it didn't get rid of those things, but it put me in a good mood, and I'm uplifted. And like you said, it reminds me why I love movies. I was doing an episode the other day for The Dark Knight Rises where I had the guests, and they asked me a question. They said, "What is a movie that you like relate to most?" I think that's what they said. The word relate. I don't remember. And I said, Spirited Away, which is another Miyazaki movie. And I said, there's something about that story that I just feel like is me. And I love it for that reason. And as much as I love these Nolan November, it's a completely different experience watching Hayao Miyazaki. Like this is My Neighbor Totoro and The Dark Knight do not compare. Great reminder. 5 out of 5. I'm sure that I will be rewatched many times. I have this list. Sorry, this is kind of long rating, but I have this list in my head where when I have kids, particularly like young kids, like toddlers, 4 or 5-year-olds, this list of movies that I'm going to watch, this definitely made it onto that list. And I look forward to that experience and a new richness that experience of being a parent will bring to something as special as this film.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. That is this movie. I just want to really quick reiterate what you stated, because yeah, this movie, really just kind of calmed me. Like, work today, I work in the retail industry. It's, a big day for that. It was super busy. Come home, dinner, everything in between. I kind of, like you said, Harrison, been super, busy lately. I had to find an hour and a half, like you said, to get this movie in. And everything else that was going on between, I did some remodeling in my house where I redid my living room. You know, and that's finally done. But all of that whirlwind, like, yeah, when I sat down and started watching this movie, you said it exactly how I felt. Like, I just felt at peace all of a sudden. It was like, okay, all the craziness from work, that's gone. Getting everything done in the house that I got done over the past week, like, that's done. I'm just sitting here watching something that I am thoroughly enjoying from the moment it really started. Like, the second it came up on screen, there was just something about this movie that like put me at ease. So I think you said that perfectly.
Yeah, I agree with what you said. One last thing to add is that this movie has a lot of rain in it. Right? One of the scenes we talked about is where they're just standing there in the
Yep.
rain with Totoro, and the rain can. I want to make this short because I tend to be long-winded. When you're in a rush and you got places to be and you're trying to do things, rain is a serious inconvenience. It gets in your way of things. Makes things take longer. Everything's wet. Like it inconveniences everything. And this movie makes me in the mood where standing in the rain and just standing there sounds like a wonderful thing to do. Like it takes almost things that in the right mood and mindset are an inconvenience and turns them into a positive experience. Like, oh my gosh, that what I just came out of my mouth is a real thing. I'm so like amazed that is.
Yeah, no, that is, I won't say anything else because I think you said that perfectly. So, what I will say is, I do want to give you, here in 1 second, another opportunity to make sure that you talk about the show where listeners can find it if they haven't found your show yet from listening to this one in the episodes that you've been on. One announcement that I want to make for Matt Goes to the Movies is I was fortunate enough to be part of a giveaway recently on the show where I did get 5 copies of Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins on Blu-ray with a digital copy to give away to listeners. I will be announcing those winners, contacting you through email so I can send out your copies. So thank you to everybody that has listened and, sent in reviews for those episodes. For any episode. That was really cool. Really looking forward to giving those out and hopefully doing something like that again in the very, very near future. So be on the lookout for, an email from Matt Goes to the Movies to let you know when I will be sending those copies out. So, Harrison, with that being said, please take a second, talk about the Basement Binge. Your your links will be in the show notes for this episode so people can click right to it. But walk us through one more time what you got going on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the chance for that. First, I gotta say, if you're listening to this episode and you're new to Matt Goes to the Movies, definitely subscribe to it wherever you're listening. He's got some great episodes, particularly this animation month that you're doing. I'm absolutely loving. Especially, you got to subscribe for the Howl's Moving Castle episode that Matt's doing. I have no idea what he's going to say. I just know that it's going to be a good episode and that you don't want to miss it. I am sitting on pins and needles waiting for that episode. So thank you for letting me be a part of this because this is a blast. But the Basement Binge, just real briefly, is a podcast very similar to this where I review movies. Matt has been on the podcast. Rob has been on the podcast. Like I mentioned at the beginning and kind of throughout this episode, currently doing Nolan November, just enjoying 8 of Christopher Nolan's films, having a lot of fun, just binging movies. Very different feeling than My Neighbor Totoro, but still fun in a different way. There's a bunch of other things. If you enjoy animation, I have my own animation season that I've done, including an episode on Spirited Away. So check out that if you like. I'm glad that I finally had a reason to watch this movie. Like I said, it's been on my watch list forever. Then I've just kind of waited to, almost have like a reason to, which it sounds silly. But more than just having a reason to watch it, I'm really grateful that I had someone to talk to about it afterwards because there's movies like this that are kind of special that I think deserve a conversation. And so thank you for letting me have a conversation with you about it because it deserves it. And I'm grateful for it. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful to have you on the show. It's been, Awesome. I mention this every single time, but we've developed a friendship because of this podcast, and it was really cool that when I started this thing, you reached out and were like, "Hey, like the show, but like, two people who never talked before in their lives. And, now it's like you said, I've been on your show, you've been here, we text periodically of what's going on. So it's just been really cool. And I'm always really grateful when you're able to come on the show or vice versa. So I definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
So with that being said, listeners, again, if for any reason you haven't checked out the Basement Binge from, listening to this show and the episodes that Harrison has been on, click the link that's going to be in the notes for this. It's a great show. The Nolan thing is something that I am just eagerly anticipating him getting through so I can listen to all of those, because I'm really interested to hear his thoughts on some of these other Nolan movies. And it's a lot of fun, and he's got some really great episodes on just a plethora of other things like the MCU. I know he's, again, like he said, he's got Spirited Away. He did one on Howl's Moving Castle, which I'll be covering. So check out the Basement Binge. You can, search that wherever you get your podcast, but it'll also be in the show notes. And until next time, from Matt Goes to the Movies, thanks for listening.